Well, good morning, y'all. Welcome to another episode of Historical Landmarks in Illinois. And we are doing, I gotta take my glasses off so I can see this thing. We are doing White County today. And I know there are going to be some really interesting things here. There's got to be. I have learned so much so far in this series. And so I'm really, really excited to see what White County has to offer. So I hope you are too, and stay tuned. All right, we are in Norris City, Illinois, and this marker is talking about the War Emergency Pipeline. Before the bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, and entry of the United States into World War II, 95% of the crude oil delivered to East Coast oil refineries was transported by tanker ships, with 90% of that oil from Texas oil fields in 1942. Oil tankers from the Gulf of Mexico were being sunk by German submarines at the rate of 3 per day. A committee appointed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt recommended an overland pipeline be built from Longview, Texas to Norris City, Illinois. Work began at Longview, Texas on August 3, 1942, with a dedication ceremony at Norris City upon completion on February 19, 1943. Newspapers and radio stations recorded the event. Newsreels of the event were shown prior to movies in theaters all over America. The first day, 60,000 barrels of crude oil flowed into Norris City. The first trainload of oil, which was 96 oil tankers, left Norris City the night of the dedication, headed for Eastern oil refineries. 15 80,000 barrel storage tanks were built, plus 3 loading racks to load tank cars on the New York Central train tracks. 13,500 barrels of crude oil were received hourly on this pipeline. Between February 19th and September 1st, 1943, the railroad hauled 124,193 tankers of oil out of Norris City. The War Emergency Pipeline put 3,500 people to work building the pipeline. The pipeline's impact on the war effort was tremendous, enabling the safe and timely transport of oil vital to the Allies during the height of wartime service. This marker is for the First Presbyterian Church in Illinois. In 1816, the Reverend James McGreedy of Kentucky organized Sharon, the First Presbyterian Church in Illinois, with Peter Miller, James Mays, and James Rutledge as ruling elders. 3 miles northeast of this site, B.F. Spillman, active Presbyterian church organizer, was ordained in 1824. 1/2 mile east is the present building and the 1817 cemetery. We are in Enfield, Illinois, and this is a marker for the Southern Illinois College, alma mater of United States Senators William E. Borah, Idaho, and Wesley L. Jones, Washington. This educational institution was chartered by the Cumberland Presbyterian Church in 1873. From the 1890s until 1935, it was a public school. It was purchased for use as a community center by the Kiwanis Club and Enfield citizens in 1967. We are in Carmi, Illinois, one of my favorite small towns in Illinois. And we are at the marker for the Colonel Conger house. Colonel Everton J. Conger, who commanded the troops capturing Abraham Lincoln's assassin, John Wilkes Booth, built this house in 1871. He practiced law in Carmi, became a federal judge in Montana Territory, and later moved to Hawaii, where he was an advisor to Queen Liliuokalani. The house was remodeled in 1941. We are still in Carmi, Illinois, outside the First Presbyterian Church. And this marker is it says, "Flow Gently, Sweet Afton." The music for this song was composed by Jonathan Edward Spillman in 1836. He entered the ministry in 1858 and became pastor of the First Presbyterian Church in 1881. This church had been organized by his brother Benjamin F. Spillman on November 25, 1827, and was the first church in Carmi. We are still outside the First Presbyterian Church of Carmi, and there's a marker for this bell. It says Bell of St. John's, United Church of Christ, dated January 24th, 1881, from Jacob Barth and wife. The bell was cast in 1905 in St. Louis, and the inscription is "Honor, Glory to God in the Highest." All right, we are still in Carmi, Illinois, and we are coming up to the marker for Carmi's oldest house. It says, "This house was built by early settler John Craw prior to 1817. In 1835, it was purchased by John M. Robinson, U.S. Senator. He was senator from 1831 to 43, and Illinois Supreme Court Justice in 1843. The house was later occupied by his daughter, Mrs. Robert Stewart, and his granddaughter, Miss Mary Jane Stewart. We are in downtown Carmi, and this is the building and the marker for the Ratcliffe Inn. It says this building was erected in 1828 by James Ratcliffe. He was nicknamed Old Beaver because of his energy. He was a founder of Carmi in 1816, an innkeeper, merchant, and postmaster, and White County's first clerk, recorder, and probate judge. Abraham Lincoln lodged here in 1840. The inn was restored in 1960. Pretty cool. All right. And it's now a museum. That's really neat. All right, we are in the country close to Epworth, Illinois, outside of Carmi. And we're here at this cemetery. And this is the former site of the Big Prairie United Methodist Church. It was founded in 1812 while this part of the country was still a wilderness and before Illinois was a state. Big Prairie Church was one of the oldest Methodist churches in Illinois at the time it closed in December of 2017. Early settlers Robert Land, John Hanna, and Joseph Pomeroy were instrumental in organizing and establishing the church. The first services alternated between the John Hanna and Robert Land cabins. In 1821, services were moved to a schoolhouse until 1863, when a frame church was built on this site. Pictured on this plaque and dedicated on June 4th, 1899, this beautiful brick church built on this site served generations of local families. For over 2 centuries, the church guided the spiritual lives of scores of families, both local and afar, through its outreach and ministries. This is the marker at the same location for Big Prairie Church, established in 1812. This church was the cradle of Methodism in White County. Early pioneers risked Indian raids to worship in the cabins of Robert Land and John Hanna. In 1812, Presiding elder Peter Cartwright sent circuit rider John Smith to this settlement. This church was organized in Hannah's house. So the church is no longer here, but the site is here, and the cemetery, of course, is still here. So this is cool. We are here at the Skeeter Mountain rest area off of Interstate 64. And this marker is the Illinois Remembers the POW MIA marker for William Ferris from West Salem and Kenneth Cunningham from Ellery. We are here in Grayville, Illinois, at the Gray Family Cemetery. And this marker says it's the present site of the Gray Family Cemetery and the former site of the First Presbyterian Church, USA. The First Presbyterian Church in Grayville was organized in 1850 under the leadership of Mrs. Thomas Ann Gray. In 1868, the members built a small wooden church on this corner of the cemetery, a gift from a member of the Gray family. It was replaced by a large brick structure in 1915. The congregation disbanded in 2005, and the land was returned to the Gray family. Here's another marker denoting the Gray Family Cemetery. Established by James R. Gray, the first interment was 1831. The obelisk there in the middle of the cemetery was erected in 1901. The church plaza was constructed in 2005, and the memorial plaza and fountain was dedicated in 2007. We are still in Grayville, Illinois, and on this corner was located the roughest, toughest saloon in the history of Grayville. It was opened after the Civil War by Mike Smith, who made a fortune in illegal whiskey and gambling. The saloon was torched in 1881 and rebuilt, and was finally put out of business by the state of Illinois. Alright, here's a marker in Grayville that says in the 1830s, James Gray's stables and slave quarters were located here. Later, he donated the barn to the city to use as a city hall and police station. In 1866, the city built a two-story building with a jail in the basement. The second story was removed in 1969, and it's still the police station today. And the next memorial is donated to the city of Grayville and dedicated to the veterans of all wars, erected by James M. Helm, post number 696, American Legion, September of 1969. And that is outside the police department as well. This marker in Grayville says on July 1st, 1838, the Vincennes to Shawneetown stagecoach line began operations and made regular stops at a log cabin hotel located on this corner. The stage carried passengers and provided mail service for the first time in this area. And this is the corner of Main Street and North Street. And we're on another corner here the corner of Main and North Street on the other side. And this marker says the first trading post was established here in 1830 by James Gray and Robert Walton. A post office was opened here in 1836. Later, a two-story frame building was erected here by the Empire Milling Company, and this corner was known as Empire Corner. That building burned in 1884, was rebuilt in 1886, and burned again in 1888. Another building was erected in 1895, but was destroyed by fire in 2003. I don't think anything was supposed to be built here then. We're still here in Grayville, Illinois, and we're walking up to the next marker, which is in front of this beautiful old house right on Route 1. Walking on a brick sidewalk. And it says, this home was built by the Gray family, the family that gave Grayville its name. When completed in 1896, it was the finest home in this area and one of the first to have electric lights, running water, and steam heat. Slave quarters and a stable were in the rear. It became known as the Gray Mansion and retains its original grandeur and charm today. This marker in Grayville is on a busy corner of the main road, and it says, on this site was the home of Thomas Ann Payne, authoress of the song Sleep Soldier Sleep, which she wrote in honor of James Bethel Gresham from Evansville, Indiana. He was the first American soldier to die in World War I. The song was accepted as a national funeral song and made her famous all over the world. Well, okay, this has been White County. I learned something. Did you? If you see, those historical marker ahead signs, be sure to pull over. You learn some really cool things. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. What did you find the most surprising in today's episode? Let's see if, how that goes. So, this has been White County, and catch us next time on Historical Markers.